Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern of Talent and Teams Consulting. And today we are here back with start of 2024 with two wonderful coaches to talk about the wonderful theme of intellection, CliftonStrengths theme of intellection. I have the honor of introducing Henk Westerveld, who is a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach, a Gallup Strengths Discovery Coach leader, and an E to Grow high-performing teams coach like Jen and I and our other guest. He and his twin brother founded and run their coaching company, Compels. I hope I said that right. Interestingly, their company name loosely means mine worker in English, which is appropriate because they focus on mining the energy of people and teams within their work. Compels coaching work is informed by Henk's previous work at the University of Amsterdam's Leadership Academy and his brother's HR background. Together, they bring a unique and different approach to leadership and how organizations should work differently. Henk comes to us today from his home in the Netherlands. So we're going international again today, folks.
Yes.
And Jen, you have the honor of introducing our other guest.
Yes. Well, welcome, Henk. And it's my honor to introduce to you Marjonne van den Hout. So like us, Marjonne is an E to Grow and Gallup Certified Strengths Coach, and she's also an EMCC Certified Senior Coach. She comes to us today from her home in the Netherlands. So both of them are from the Netherlands. This is great. And her company is called Leaf Spring. She and her team of colleagues specialize in guiding entrepreneurs, leaders, and professionals who seek to take ownership and responsibility of who they are and what they aim to achieve. Welcome, Marjonne.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we dive in deep into this intellection theme, let's maybe start with where it falls for you in your top five. Marjonne, for you?
For me, it's my number 5.
For you, it's your number 5. And Henk, for you?
For me, it's my number 2.
Okay, great. So to level set us, Chad, can you read for us the short description from Gallup about the CliftonStrengths talent theme of intellection?
Yes, so Gallup defines this theme as follows. People exceptionally talented in the intellection theme are characterized by their intellectual activity. They are introspective and appreciate intellectual discussions. And having met both of these people before, I know that they're going to bring some serious depth to this podcast episode.
Absolutely.
So I'm thrilled that they are here to join us. Jen, I have to ask, where does this theme fall for you?
This is why it's so important we have them on today. It's 26 for me. So this is well down the list.
Okay. I'm going to split the difference. I'm 16. So okay. I'll take the advice of the people that 2 and 5. I'll yes. sit back and hope I can engage at 16. And Jen, you'll just have a time to learn. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So as we do with every episode, we start with just understanding this theme. As coaches, we know that themes rarely operate in silo, but for the benefit of our listeners and starting to unpack what this theme is and how it shows up, I'd like to ask both of you, and Henk, I'm going to start with you, just how this theme shows up for you personally. What does it look like? How does it play out in your life?
I think that people who know me know that I'm always, sometimes I'm staring just around and thinking, so people can see when I think, and that's very often. So then I'm a little bit isolated from the group. So even in my family, when I'm sitting in the room, then sometimes they are talking to me, and I don't hear them because I'm in my head, and that's and I'm very happy to be there.
It's your happy place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I heard a lot of alone time for you then is important.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's very important to have my own space And last this holidays, my family went abroad for 3 days, and I told my wife that I was very happy that she was gone, that I was alone. But of course, because I knew that they came back, so that's very important also.
Okay.
Yeah, but I need my time for myself.
Nice. Okay. Good to definitely understand that right off the bat. We've had so many other episodes where the importance of people is so central, and to hear sort of the, not the opposite, but just the counterpoint to that is interesting. Marjonne, how about you?
Yeah, for me, my intellect really shows up because everything that's around me, by new observations, things that people are saying, things that I read, that I learned, all the input that I got, everything gets into my head, and I'm puzzling and thinking about it. So it's, for me, it's something that's constantly going on. Everything that happens, everything that comes into my world, that's something to think about. There's not much that I don't think about. So it's almost a filter that everything that comes in has to go through.
Oh.
So I do recognize what Henk is saying, that for me it's the same. I really need time to think, and thinking is something I can do maybe at the best when I'm by myself, having me time. And me time can be a walk outside, can also be working a day alone in my own office without other people. So I can be working a whole day and having this feeling of all the space to think, to don't get new observations and input from others, but just be with myself. So that's how it shows up for me.
Nice.
Briefly, we will discuss
Yes,
more about it.
Yeah, sure.
That's as an introduction.
Yeah, I'm curious. One of the things that's sort of popping out to me just in your initial responses is it almost sounds like your own best friend. Is it like a voice you converse with, or does it take on a persona of some sort?
What resonates better for me is the happy place. It's
Okay.
not a persona, but it's a for me it's a place where I want to be. I want to be in this quiet place. And in that quiet place, it's not that quiet because there's happening a lot, and there are lots of thoughts and lots of things to organize or reflect on and give place and see from other perspectives. But it's more, for me, it's more like a place to be than a person to be with.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
And
Okay,
then,
but I recognize what you say, Jet, because when I'm sitting in the car and I have to travel a lot, then I find it very, very cozy to be alone and have some discussions with myself, and then I think I call it my imaginary friend, who I'm talking to, and well, it's discussing and reflecting actually. And overthink the things that happens at that moment.
okay.
I like that, your imaginary friend. I wondered, being that you're both talking about this time alone, is there a sweet spot to the amount of time you get alone? Like, is there, and I guess maybe another way to say this is, in a 24-hour period of time, if you had your choice, how much of that time would you like to be alone with your thoughts? Henk, you want to answer first?
Yeah, well, I go to bed very late in the evening. Mostly it's a night already. So when everybody sleeps, that's my best time. Then I'm alone and I can really think, have all the time, and no one will disturb me. And sometimes I think about getting out and have a walk in the night. When I was younger, I really did this, but nowadays I stay at home. But that's very good time for me to overthink the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. Marjonne, what about for you?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. Is there a special day or moment, or I think it depends on the day and what's possible. But I do know that if I have too many days in a row that there's no time for me to have this quietness just by myself,
Mhm.
then I got stuck somewhere. So for me, it's really important to organize time in my calendar, in my weekly calendar, to have this time by myself. So,
Nice.
for instance, I try to have the Fridays just for myself, and I'm working, but I try to have as less interaction with other people as possible. This may sound weird. Not having interaction with other people. Of course I do have my family and my things around, but I try to slow down the work with clients and projects and phone calls, just to slow down, overthink what I've done, look forward to what I have to do next week, puzzle it all together, and well, it's also a way of getting this quietness again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It-
And also for what is for Henk the evening, for me, I'm very good very early in the morning.
Mm,
So if I miss it, if my weeks are too busy, I can get up very early at, say, at 5, or yeah, around 5, and just have this time to very slowly start my day, do some meditation, or sitting just by myself with my thoughts, or do some journaling. Yeah, to do the process work.
Yeah. Nice.
One other question I had just before we move on. I know Jen's anxious to hear sort of the positives and negatives of this, but one of the things that I've heard from others with intellection, and in previous conversations I've had with both of you, that around this, is that the thinking is the doing. It's interesting. We just did an episode on focus, and our guest there, Amy Schumann, talked a lot about having time to herself. We were doing focus. She loves large chunks of time that's uninterrupted, kind of like what you were just describing. But it's very much about doing for her. Focus is heavily activity driven, outward output that people can see. But what I'm hearing from certain responses, and from what I know of the theme already, even though number 16 for me, is that for you, it sounds like the thinking is the doing. The sitting and kind of staring off. You're not really doing anything, but everything's going on inside. Is that an accurate description? And is there anything you would sort of add to that, or clarify around that idea, just so that people who might be listening to this, that are seeing people in their lives have intellection, oh, that's what they're doing when they're staring off into the window, out onto the fields or whatever. Is that what's going on?
I think this is very important to know this for yourself and the people around you, that when you are sitting and thinking, that's an activity, and it's a very important activity for people with intellection. So I'm living in a boathouse, and all my neighbors go to their work in the morning, and when it's sunny, I sit outside, and people go to their work. And in the afternoon, they come back, and I'm sitting at the same place and have been thinking, writing, reading, and thinking again. And there were, in the past, I thought, well, I'm not doing this in the good way. I'm always thinking and sitting, and I'm not active. But now I know, working with the CliftonStrengths, that it's hard work, and it's work that I like. But sitting and thinking is an activity.
Mhm.
And people have to know,
Yeah.
have to understand.
Anything you want to add there?
Yeah. Yeah, I really have this same experience by myself. The thinking is a doing activity.
Mhm.
It's the same for me, but you just ask me, when do you do this? It's not that I schedule always my thing. My thinking is a constantly, it's always there. So when I'm in a meeting or in work with my clients, I can be very quiet, listening, absorbing, and my thinking is going on. So when people have the idea that you have to be active and let your voice hear all the time, it's not for me. But when I speak up, I might say some things that I have thought about, and can be very valuable to listen to because I've given it some thought.
Yeah.
And that was what I've been doing during this meeting while all the other people have been talking and I was so quiet. So it's not that I don't participate, but I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
So it's really an activity. It's something, yeah. It costs energy as well.
Yeah, it definitely
Yeah, I
sounds like
can
it,
feel it.
especially if it's
Yeah.
a constant hum in your head.
Yeah.
Oh,
A
right.
constant hum of activity in your head that obviously would take a lot of energy. And I have similar thoughts around, going all the way back to our analytical episode. That's my number 5, and doing that listening and reflecting on. It's obviously coming from different places and done slightly differently, but I can so resonate with that idea. So I really appreciate you highlighting that, because I think that, especially in our 24/7 world, everybody thinks, oh, you're going to be doing all the time. And here we have a really powerful set of people, but also talents, that the thinking is truly an activity unto itself. And I think that's, I really appreciate both of you highlighting that fact before we move on to the next question, because I know Jen's just anxious to start getting into some of the nuances of this.
Yes, absolutely. So like Chad said, we know that these don't work all on their own, that your intellection theme, you can't really separate that from your other themes, but as much as you can, as possible, we want to just talk about the positive, because we know everything has a good side and a bad side. We've shared in all of our other episodes where our talents are fantastic and serve us well, but other times they really get in our way and maybe even cause some havoc or some misunderstandings or other things. And so I want to start from the bad side and then work our way back to the positive. But so starting with this potential negative impacts that you've had with your intellection theme. Marjonne, I want to come to you first. Can you share a little bit with us where your intellection theme might have tripped you up in the past?
So the downside for me from my intellection team, I think when I look back in the past, sometimes it shows up for me when it showed up when I felt really alone. So sometimes it's hard to find companion from other people where you can share your thoughts with. So quite a few people mentioned in the past, and they still will do. Marjonne, you are thinking so much. You're thinking about things we don't think about. So it made me sometimes feel like I was a stranger. I was weird. I was. So it made me feel so different from other people. And yes, that's what I'm doing. So it was so helpful for me to see in my Clifton Strengths how it's my potential and how I can use this talent to grow even more in who I am. But that was really, that was I think one of the downsides for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that. I know from others that I've coached that have intellection that they say unless they have the right person to share some of their thoughts that they've had, that they feel like they can't really tell other people because they either don't understand or aren't thinking about those things, exactly what you just said, that they felt alone. So thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that. Henk, can you what do you have to add to this? Where do you feel like your intellection has gotten in your way?
I recognize the feeling of being alone, even mostly in bigger groups when there are a lot of people and they are talking about nothing. Then I'm not at that place anymore. So then I'm in my head and I think my own thoughts, and so this is sometimes it makes you a little bit a strange person. But in the morning when I'm sitting at drinking my coffee and then I'm just staring, looking at nothing. Sometimes people ask me, "What are you doing actually?" And I can only say, "Well, I'm thinking. I'm doing nothing but thinking." And when I'm really alone at that moment, that thinking can make me inefficient. I need then the activator to bring me back in the world. Because otherwise I will sit there for an hour, sometimes 2 hours, doing nothing, thinking. But the other side, when I go to my office and go to the work, then it's going to be very fast because I've thought about everything already. So I will go with the flow, and it's very fast then.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Speed up.
It's already processed. That's how it sounds.
Yeah.
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 Yes.
And that sounds like a wonderful contribution to the upside of this. I'm struck by your comments about being sort of alone, or being sort of the outsider because of maybe not wanting to engage with sort of the small talk. That's one of the things I'm kind of hearing is small talk's not really interesting. You want the deep stuff. And it's just a really interesting perspective, given that those of us engaging with you would need to know that, okay, just start at the deep level and don't worry about the surface stuff. So I appreciate that.
And I think here comes the importance of knowing yourself, knowing that I love to have the deep conversations, and you can't always have the deep conversations.
Right.
So for me, it's really helpful. And that also made, so what I just told was my past, where I felt very alone. Now I grow in my talent, and I'm getting more mature, and I think I'm quite mature in my talents, using my talents. So when you can find the depth in conversations and when not. So the frustration or the loneliness that you could feel in the past, that I could feel in the past, is getting less because your expectations of what you can get at which moment and what you need or what you can bring, what's helpful. It's much easier nowadays for myself to lead this.
Yeah. Yeah, you can discern when that time, when it's a good time to actually be able to get deep, and as opposed to being upset that you don't have that opportunity in that moment.
So it's better in getting more mature in this talent. You know how to manage it. And sometimes there's no time to give it so much thought. So we have to go and we have to go and we have to go. And sometimes I can push the button and say, okay, or put a brake on it. Just stop, give it some thoughts. And last week, my colleague said to me, okay, I don't want to push you. Give it some thought and come back on it in the next 2 weeks. Well, that was very helpful for me.
Oh, yeah.
So he was using my talent, and he could see at my face that it was a lot of information. It was very important. He knows if I want to use her in the right way, I give her some time to think about it.
Nice.
So, yeah, I really appreciated that.
Yeah, that's great. Henk, do you have that same experience where you would like people to give you time before you're asked to give an opinion or share?
No, I don't recognize it because I think then comes in my strategic. I also have a strategic, and that makes me faster in my thinking and looking for scenarios already. But when I have a really big problem, then I really give myself the time and the space, sit down and really go into my head and think, okay, Henk, you can do this. Look at the problem, what's going on now, how are you going to solve this, and take your time. So and then it speeds up.
This is what I love about these conversations and having two of you on is we get to see the flavor of your other talents coming in and how it's so different when you can have a theme that's the same. This is why we're all so unique and so special, and what makes us all so powerful is having this combination and having a similar talent but using it in maybe what seems like completely different ways, but it's all also so much the same. So yeah, I'm just loving this conversation. Thank you both so much for sharing, being vulnerable about some of those dark sides, because we know, like, tongue in cheek, we like to laugh about some of the things that have tripped us up in the past, but we know that people who are just starting out are having some of these feelings right now, and hearing from someone who's lived it, learned it, and continues to grow, you know, it's really helpful for others to hear. So thank you so much. So I want to flip it and go right to the positives. So Henk, you already started to take us there. So I would like to start with you then. Where have you found that your intellection theme has really just helped you just surpass what you thought you had, as far as your goals and different things? Where has this really benefited your life?
Yeah, well, I think intellection loves problems, and looking at a problem is actually, I think it's never a problem. It's an opportunity, and it gives you the chance to think about everything what has to do with it. So when I look at a problem, I see it like a circle. I want to go around it, looking for a hole in it, and then go inside the problem and look at the other side. What's all the information that I need to solve this? And well, then I get some energy, and that's very, very nice to be there.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Marjonne, what can you add?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wouldn't use the word problem solving in my case.
Mm-hmm.
For me, intellection comes to seeing the worth of it. The deeper value is also that the thinking brings quietness in myself, which is also an opening for observing, listening, being very aware in the moment. So my thinking is not only in my head, it's only giving me the space to be with the information, whatever is in the field. So it's on different levels that I get input that comes in and sets on my thinking. And it's the thinking, but it's also the introspection. So it's thinking about different information, different concepts, bringing it together, but also what does it mean for me? How do I relate to what I'm hearing? How do other people relate to this? So and here we also hear some different talents from me that we come in the conversation. We
Right.
will talk about this later, but that's how it works for me. And I think we've spoken about this yesterday as well, that intellection also helps you to be a very good listener and observer.
Okay. Yeah, you
Yeah,
had
so
you had
that's
shared you had shared before an example of when you gave some information or asked some questions, and it almost came from a different perspective. Could you add a little more about that, like finding those different perspectives?
yeah. When there was an example that I had yesterday with one of my clients, when a question came to me that I could answer very easily on just giving the answer on the question. But I had given it some thought on beforehand, and I thought, well, if we want to make a real impact on the problem the client has, we shouldn't go straight to the easiest answer, but see the different perspectives. So
Yeah.
I try to help the client to see the different perspectives and share my thoughts that I had with her.
Yeah.
And coming from that perspective, instead of just going into the action, for her action activator and responsibility is very high. So I know she wants to move forward.
Yeah.
She would love to set a date for the next action. And just to give her some time to see and reflect on what's the real question, what's the question behind the question, and how can we make a sustainable impact. It might be helpful to give it some more thought. We already have quite a long relationship, so she trusted me in this step, which was very helpful. And that was something I thought, this is my intellection that's really helpful in this part.
Yeah, what I loved about hearing that example from you is similar to Hank's, how he like looks at the problem from all different angles and then finds the hole and goes in and then looks around from the inside. It's this like constant, almost curiosity. Is that right?
Yeah,
There's a lot
I
for
think
me.
it.
There's a lot of curiosity.
Yeah, I think it's a natural way of doing research. Well, I think intellection lacks an intellectual conversation, and then you are. I'm always. I think it makes me a good listener because I want to hear what the other person thinks
Yeah.
or do not think, and I want to bring that person to another stage of thinking and think about the things that he or she didn't ever thought about. And you are doing the research with the other person. So this is a kind of intellectual research.
Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
It also sounds to me a really creative.
Yeah, well, I have also ideation, so I don't
Ah,
have for other
There it
people.
is.
there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's
Awesome.
interesting, Jen, that you're bringing up other themes. We're going to go to some questions around other themes in a minute. But
Yeah.
one of the things, so for our audience, they should know that both of our guests, as well as myself, all have learner as our number one. So two strategic thinking themes.
So good.
But as a learner, I do not, as already highlighted, I don't have intellection particularly high. But what I'm noticing as a learner is the wonderful ability for this theme to use the thinking as almost another learning tool. So
It is.
it's the curiosity. You can ask a lot of questions of others. You get that input, and this is what I'm hearing. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. It's just I'm trying to reflect back a few things I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is that the learner is asking some of the questions, but your internal mindset is also asking questions of your own assumptions or your own rethinking the same piece of information from a couple different vantage points. That is not learner. That is learner is very
Yeah.
much an external, and this what I'm hearing is
This is
a
the internal
reprocessing of the
process.
same information, which
Yeah.
I think is a wonderful idea
Ah.
for people to understand about the difference between, say, learner and intellection. They can pair together, they can do a lot of the similar things, but this is a very different thing. So for fellow learners that are listening to this, know that this is a completely different operation.
Mhm.
Am I
Mhm.
accurate in that reflection back? I don't want to put words in
Yeah.
anybody's mouth, but that's what I was
Yep.
hearing, because
Yeah.
it's the
For me, it
reprocessing that
resonates. Yeah.
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think I use other people as a source for my intellection, so and also for my learner. But my other people are sources, and they give me information to think about and to think with them or for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And I
Wonderful.
think here comes also the curiosity is a very important part.
Mhm.
Because there's no in my case, it's not that my thinking is the truth. It's the thinking is the process, and the process, that's something very valuable to share with others. And what Henk is saying, getting their input, reflect on that. So it's a constantly process of thinking, observing, reflecting, giving back to other people, and finding a way of where the best comes out for us. Or maybe there's no solution, there's no truth, there's no answer, but it's a process that helps us to come further.
Mhm.
Wow. I could sit with that idea all day. my learner's already trying to process that. Yeah. because we only have an hour, I want to keep us moving and talk about some other themes. Now that we've started to broach this idea of, the intellection pairing with a few other themes and, making the most of it. I am curious, and Marjonne, I'm going to come to you first with this. Our themes don't work alone. Are there themes that you commonly find yourself pairing with your intellection to accelerate its success or get the most out of that thinking process that you've been talking about? Is there a turbo boost, a theme that you go to, or a couple of them?
Yeah.
And if you could highlight maybe what that contribution is, briefly.
Well, I think there's one dynamic between 3 of my themes in my top 5 that I can hardly see separately. That's my learner on 1, input on 3, and intellect on 5. So learner, input, intellect, that's a very strong combination for me. Where the learner, what you just said, is more the external information that comes in. Yeah. The input is also different. It's not only input from books or external information, but it's also observations, feelings, emotions. So my empathy is on number 11, but that's also one of the signals that comes in from me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the input, and then the intellect it's more the digesting process of everything that comes in. And where I can learn, and where I have these constantly questions. So it's my questioning that comes from my learner, but that's also processed by the intellect.
Yeah, that's a fantastic.
And there's another
trio.
couple. Yeah. So this is my first dynamic of 3 of my themes that is very strong, and the second one that I would bring into this conversation is my intellect and my responsibility, which is on number 2 for me. And my responsibility in combination with my intellect is very often the combination that you see coming back when it comes to more ethical questions. Is what we are doing the right thing? Is what I'm doing who I want to be? Does that resonate with my values? Are we doing the right things? So are we staying on the compass that we want to have together in this project or in the company? So I can also be a pain in the ass for people to ask the questions coming from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because knowing all these different perspectives, seeing, feeling all these different values or whatever, and then coming back to the core of this. What is it that we really stand for? So sometimes that's not very easy to bring in, but it's my responsibility together with this intellect that really feels I have to bring this in. Yeah. We have to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a really valuable contribution to a lot of teams. They don't take the time to think about, go back and reflect. And that's one of the words I'm constantly taking away from this conversation is the power of your ability to reflect and bring it back. You're bringing it back to responsibility. Jen, I'm amazed you haven't chimed in with your belief, because this sounds exactly like what we've talked about in the belief episode. But it is such a wonderful ability. So I appreciate you highlighting that ability. Part of the reason we ask this question is that for those that are, continuing to advance their development of their themes, are there ways that they can look at their own theme list and think about, pairings that can accentuate or accelerate the usefulness of certain talent themes? Henk, I want to bring this over to you, because I know you have a bit of a different list in terms of your top 5 and top 10. And I'm curious, what combos do you bring to combine with your intellection to get sort of the most out of it?
Yeah, I think when you look at the dynamics of the themes, and then you can keep on talking, because it's working together. 1 on 2 and 2 on 3. And I have in my whole top 5 the learner, intellection, futuristic, strategic, and ideation. So these are all strategic themes that brings me into my head and to theorize the things, make concepts. So these are very helpful for the intellection, and they are working together all the time. But I really need the strategic to bring me back to the daily situation and bring me back to the purpose. What do I have to do? What do we get out of this? So the strategic is very important, but also my significance. That's my number 7. So the significance, I want to do something right, and I have to it has to lead to a purpose. I need a purpose of life, of doing the things and doing the things in the good way. So these are very important talent themes that have to work together with intellection. Otherwise, I won't be an efficient person. It makes the strategic, also I think futuristic, and significance makes me active.
Gets you into action. Got it.
I see it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm gonna not completely flip it to the negative, but I do want to continue to explore this sort of theme dynamic and which themes you might be coupling for certain reasons. Jen has already asked some wonderful questions about, when our themes get in our way or get away from us, maybe go a little bit into overdrive. I'm curious if you get sort of in your head, not too much, but you obviously, there's a lot of mental activity. There may not be quite as much of the action side. When that intellection starts to get away from you, are there themes that you lean on to bring you back into that more effective mode? And you've kind of touched on a little bit with futuristic and getting you into action. But I was just, and responsibility as well. But I was just wondering if there are any others that help with that sort of runaway train idea and hitting the brakes a little bit and maybe, finding a more appropriate use of that intellection. Is there anything else you want to expand upon in terms of your answers to the previous question as well?
Yeah, I was a teacher in the Leadership's Academy.
Yeah.
And when I was standing in front of the group, I had my preparation, and I knew what I had to teach them, to tell them. And sometimes then my intellection goes his own way. And then at that moment, I can think about several other options. And so people can see me at that moment. I'm really thinking. They can see that I think. It's taking a few seconds, sometimes 20 seconds, and that's can be weird for other people. So when they really know me, then they know, okay, he's thinking now. But then my self assurance helps me to come back and to take the way that I have to take at that moment. So sometimes I have to go back to the things that I had prepared, and sometimes I am self-assured enough to go to choose the other way.
Got it.
Okay.
Wonderful. Path. Okay, Marjonne, how about you? What themes are you using to slow the train a little bit when it gets going too fast?
To slow the thinking.
Yes, slow the thinking, slow the train of thoughts back to where.
Yeah, well, on number 2 is my responsibility. My responsibility is on number 2, and my arranger on number 9, and my achiever on number 6. And my achiever and my arranger responsibility really helps me to come into action. So I'm really a person of lists. So every day I have my list what to do. So I'm really good in organizing also my thinking. When is there time for thinking? I know tomorrow will be a me time. Tomorrow is really a day I look forward to. It's a day for myself. I have a reflection time. I have a group of friends that I will join for deep thoughts and deep thinking. So that's my day tomorrow. today I've been very productive, and I can also stop when there's no time to think about all these things now, but I can organize it. I know when I have time to think about things, and I really schedule it, preparation time for the meetings that I have with my clients. So I will always be prepared because I have to think about what I'm going to do before I go there.
Yeah.
Before I go to a client, I will have my reflection on the way to the client. What am I going to do? What are my intentions? How do I want to be? I will have my reflection afterwards on the project. So reflecting on the work, but also the introspection on how have I been. But that's kind of organized in the day. So during the day, I don't think a lot of people will say that I'm in a nothing mode or not doing. I'm always thinking, I'm not aware, I'm not there, I'm not busy. I think most of people will say she's a very active, busy person. And I can be that at those moments because I organize the time that I need for myself to slow down, to digest. So for me, it's really the arranger, the achiever, and the responsibility that helped me being in the execution and in the doing.
Yeah, wonderful.
Great.
Does that yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Great. I love your arranger because I'm not very organized, and I could use it. And luckily enough, my twin brother has the arranger, so that helps.
Nice.
But I like the arranger, that you can arrange the things for you at one day that you can. Yeah.
It really helps me.
Yeah.
It really helps me. Yeah.
And
I think,
fantastic.
it's a way of coming away from the thinking, but I also need so what I just said was, instead of just being in this thinking mode, this is how I'm in the doing, but I also need the thinking away from the doing. So it's really this infinite flow that I need both of them. And that's what we discussed earlier. It's my top 5, which is the most strong in my strategic thinking. But in my 6 to 10, there are some really important other talents to keep the balance in everything.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm only using the top 5 or only the 6, or that I use my 6 to 10 only on Monday and Tuesday and use the others. It's the constant, and that's the nice thing of working with the strengths and getting to know them, learning them, practicing, seeing how it works and how it doesn't work, and getting them in a more mature and strength way.
Right. Yeah. Flexing those muscles when they need to be used, or making them work for us instead of, working smarter, not harder kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's my maximizer on number 10. That's popping in here.
Nice.
Keep learning and maximize.
Yes.
And this is a very important one, because people are working very hard in it in 24/7 world, and then we have to do it right, and we have to do it now, and we have to work hard, but slow down, and intellection can slow you down and overthink and make it a little bit smarter.
Yeah.
And I that's what we have to give, I think, to other people. Sometimes help them. Okay, sit down, think, and don't act.
Yeah. I've definitely come away with that thread from this conversation. This is a power of slowing down. Jen, I'm just thinking about all your wonderful purple themes there. That you're all about the doing. Here you've got 2 wonderful people willing to slow us down a little bit.
And it's so good, with my first strategic thinking talent at 14, and it's analytical, and then the rest of them are at the bottom, like very close to the bottom. So to have you both on and hearing the benefit of that slowing down, of taking the time, of seeing all of the different perspectives of the issue or whatever it is that you're thinking of, I definitely see that value there. There's so much value in slowing down as a recovering overachiever. Yes. I see the value. Absolutely.
Jen, do you want to take us to our next question?
Yeah, so this one we like to do with all of the themes. It kind of lightens the mood a little bit. We bring in some pop culture references, maybe some imagery, and it's really about finding an image or explaining an image that you have when you think about your intellection theme. What images come to mind? Marjonne, I'm going to start with you.
Mm. I think an image that comes to my mind when I think about my intellection is a very large tree with deep roots, deep in the ground, a very huge trunk,
Mhm.
and lots of leaves with blue sky between the leaves. But the leaves are moving, and it's the curiosity how the sun and how the wind and how the light comes in. So looking up and looking down, and there's also my connectedness here. How does that all come together? And how is this tree part of a wood? So what are the different perspectives and what does it bring me? So it's the wondering, the curiosity, the quietness, the nature that I'm really in the being, and giving also time for the thinking and the wondering.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like
So
that.
that's for me, that's really the place that in the start of our conversation, I was talking about the place where I want to be. This is the place where I want to be and where I am when my intellect really pops in.
Sitting under that tree, pondering all of it.
Or wandering around the tree.
Oh, wandering around the tree.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice. Hank, what
Okay,
about for you?
I will sit next to you at another tree then.
Yeah, I would love to be there with you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, my wife sometimes tells me you look like a Buddhist monk.
Mm,
So I think about the Buddha statue. Um, Although I don't like the statue, which don't find it very good
that-
to look at it, but
yeah.
I think the Buddha statue, because sitting down, really take my time to think. Sometimes maybe I think that I'm not thinking at all, um, um, and then I'm really quiet inside myself, and I do not hear anything around me. So when I'm there, then I'm a little bit a Buddhist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Chad, do you have one?
Yeah, so I actually have two. One ties into what we were talking about in terms of the trifecta, the learner, input, and election. So this actually came out of some client work I did. A wonderful woman that had that trifecta. We ended up talking about sort of the bagless vacuums, the ones that have usually like a tornado action to them. And to set the scene, learner is the sort of the direction of the vacuum, what you need to soak up, what you need to take in. And then the input is the actual sort of motion of getting that information all in one place. But the intellection part is really the canister where everything is sort of cycled around and separated. The big heavy stuff falls to the bottom, the real small dust stuff gets sent off to the secondary filter. But that sorting, the processing, the constantly going around, we've talked about going around topics or situations or perspectives, constantly doing that, whether it's fast or slow, was one image that I've thought about ever since I had that coaching engagement, coaching conversation. And the second one is similar, but might resonate with a slightly different group of people, which is the old pan mining for gold. You used to scoop up sand and water and you sift it around and you kind of move the sand and get some of the real light silt to come off the top. And eventually what you're left with are the sort of the golden nuggets at the bottom. And that's the real valuable stuff. And I've gotten that impression just from this conversation of the constantly thinking about what is truly true. What is an idea I still need to cycle around some more, polish it off again before it really becomes something valuable to contribute to the team. So that pan mining for gold idea is one that has stuck with me in terms of intellection. I would also just add one of the images that you both just shared is about the tree. And I was reflecting on the very first part of our conversation of the thinking is the doing. And trees, you don't see them bursting with action, right? You don't see bark just flying off trees because they're exploding out into the,
Right.
it's so
Right.
slow and so incremental. But the amount of activity that's happening inside that trunk and inside the branches
It's
and the
enormous.
grill and the leaves as they're slowly growing,
Mhm.
what a wonderful image for people to take away. And I don't want to minimize the way that you thought of the tree, but as you said it, I was like, oh, there's a whole other level to this. And I just wanted to bring it up because I think it's such a great image for this theme based on everything you shared today. So thank you very much for putting that image out. Jen, I do want to ask you if you have
That's where the name of Leaf Spring comes from.
Oh, there you go.
Oh.
Oh, see, I knew something in the
Love
universe
it.
was going to connect here.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Great.
So, Jen,
I've
just
given it some thought.
I bet you have.
oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful.
You know, after reflecting on the conversation, thinking about those that I know that have intellection high, we've been watching, and it's not a new show because it's been out a while, but Netflix, it all of a sudden just exploded. Young Sheldon. So this is Sheldon
Okay.
Cooper from the Big Bang Theory. As a child, so he's a 9-year-old in high school, and he's surrounded by other kids who are older than him, but not as smart as him. He thinks a lot. He knows a lot. He takes in a lot of information. I'm sure he has Learner in his top 5 too. But there was one episode I saw that I really loved. He finally found another kid who was really smart, and they started to have this intellectual conversation. He tried it out. Like most people he says things to, it goes right over their head. They don't know what he's talking about. And this kid came back and said, oh, well, have you ever thought of, and he's like, I think I'm really going to like talking to you. And it's one of those, like, I catch it out of both of you and out of others that I know who have intellection high. I have a close family member who has intellection high. And that is one of the things that they've shared with me is they love finding other people who like to be in deep intellectual thought and conversation and sharing of ideas and bouncing these off of one another. And just listening to the two of you, it brought me back to that little moment where little 9-year-old Sheldon is talking to, an adult essentially, but able to finally share like all of his great ideas and thoughts. So that's the one I have for today.
That's fantastic.
Great. Yeah. Love
So
that.
as we start to think about, we've talked a lot about intellection within the individual. One of the last topics we always like to cover is thinking about how to help those around those with intellection, help them bring their best. So I'm curious if you each might share an idea or two around, if you were advising a team leader or even a colleague of the team leader and colleague don't have intellection, but they need to bring out the best in a team member that they're working with or leading that has intellection. How do people around you bring out the best? Do they provide certain opportunities or relationships or opportunities to do the thing that you've talked about? I'm just curious what you would advise a team member to do to get the best out of somebody with intellection. And
A team lead or a team member?
Either one.
Either.
Just somebody that is trying to work alongside someone with intellection and kind of not pulling it out of them, but helping them open up the doors for allowing that person to give their best contribution.
I can share some ideas about this. And it also reflects to what my colleague did this week. At the same meeting, he did two very important things. First, he gave me time to think. So as soon as he noticed it's a lot of information, he saw me thinking. He saw my process was already going on. And he knows by knowing me that it's valuable. So he gave me time to think about it and not rushing me. So that's one of the things. What's also helpful at the same moment is to come to an agreement. When can we come back on this? So give boundaries to the thinking process. So for me, that's very helpful. And I would give this as an advice to other people. Give people with intellection time to think, but also come to a commitment. When can we come back to this? And when are you ready to ventilate your ideas? And that comes the second advice. Invite people with intellect to share their ideas and know, at least that's from my perspective, that the thoughts they have don't have to be the truth. People with intellection, from my perspective, I'm not the one who's telling the truth, but I want to share in a safe space my thoughts with you. So give them time to ventilate and create a safe space to share the thoughts.
That's fantastic advice.
I think for a lot of people with intellect, it's vulnerable. So be aware of the vulnerability of the one who's sharing their thoughts and know where they're coming from what intentions they bring in their thoughts. And if you give that space, you have very valuable information and a workplace together.
I think that's such an important thing that you just shared with us, is that these things that you're sharing, those thoughts and ideas that you've been kicking around, that you've been digesting, are actually vulnerable to you. Sharing that is vulnerable. I don't know that I ever understood that before, that sharing what you're thinking would be vulnerable. So thanks for pointing that out. I think that's a really important thing for others who don't have intellection high to understand.
Yeah. Hank, what about you? What advice would you add? Or, I mean, do you have other thoughts, or do you have something that would pair with what was just shared?
I think I can build on that, because I think when people with intellection, it's not always easy to communicate the thoughts that you have in your head, because they can go any direction, and sometimes you need the right direction. People have to help you to give some structure on your thoughts. So let them communicate, let them talk about their thoughts, and bring some structure for this person, so that you can help and say, well, when I listen to you, then I think, is this what you are saying? And that really helps, because otherwise it goes around, and then the communication stops, because I don't always know how to express my thoughts.
Good to know.
That's great, really great. I love, I'm going to comment just on the observation Jen made about both your contributions. Is, I think a lot of us from the outside that don't have intellection think, oh, okay, they're doing all this thinking, they have very valuable insights. Once they share those insights, those are solid. They really are standing by them. And one of the things that Jen pointed out is it's not a steel ball, it's a glass ball. That sharing and putting that out there can be a bit vulnerable. And so, to Hank's point, you need somebody around that to sort of help hold it, secure it, guide it, and protect it, so that it can stay valuable to the team and doesn't get broken up, or gets pushed aside because of maybe the thinking, the thought process up to sharing the idea hasn't been fully fleshed out for everybody. So just a really interesting observation. And again, I would agree with Jen. That was not a current understanding I had of intellection. I knew they thought, and I've taken that away. I know they think hard and they come up with really good ideas, but that the vulnerability of that idea is not as solid as I thought it was. So I really appreciate you sharing both of those. I want to ask you to help us sort of wrap up this episode. As coaches, if you're anything like me, you try and get your coaching clients to help summarize their own experience at the end of a coaching call. Jen and I have sort of taken that same approach to wrapping up our episodes, I'd like to ask each of you to maybe highlight one or two key takeaways that you've either discovered through the process of this conversation, or an idea that you really want to make sure our listeners are paying very close attention to when it comes to thinking about the intellection talent theme. Henk, I'm going to start with you, ask for your two, and then Marjonne, I'd ask that you contribute your one or two thoughts as we wrap up. So Henk, what would you really emphasize for us?
Yeah, I think we started with the conversation with the fact that someone with intellection has need the space to think and to reflect, and we are looking for quietness. And when you do this, when you have intellection, and some people who do not know their talents yet or their strength yet, they don't know that it's okay to have this space for yourself. It's not selfishness. It's really a strong need, and you have to be aware of the fact that you are helping yourself and the people around you when you take your time and look for the space that you need. And well, it's not really not selfishness.
That's great.
Was there another idea that you wanted to pop in there, or should we move on?
Yeah, I think a lot of thoughts in my head are fading away. So it's also very important to look for people around you who can help you to get some, to formulate your thoughts and to categorize it. So look for people around you who are really different from you, and who help you, people with deliberative, with the arranger, the activator, that's really helpful for someone with an intellection, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you for those two wonderful thoughts. Marjonne, finish this out. Help us finish this out.
Yeah, woo.
Yeah, no pressure, no pressure.
No pressure.
The most difficult question. I just wrote down 3 words. I think thinking about intellection, it's process work. Okay. So that's one of the words that comes to my mind. Curiosity is a constantly the curiosity that pops up, and to finish and close with one of the last words that we brought into the conversation is the power of the vulnerability. The not knowing, but also when you ventilate, when you bring it in, it's also vulnerable. It's just the thought. It's not the knowing. It's not the definitely this is the truth. It's part of the truth. So.
Wow.
Excellent shares. Yeah.
That's
those are 3 great phrases right there. That's fantastic. Jen, was there anything else you want to ask these wonderful guests before we wrap up and wish them adieu?
They did so great. You know, I learned so much from this session, and you know, being that I don't have strategic thinking high, just hearing it from the 2 of you, I'm sure there's lots of ways I could partner with you to help me rethink different perspectives and ideas. And so I'll definitely be looking to, you know, reach out to you to understand more about what this means for you and how it works for you, because it's so strong. Welcome. I can see it. Yeah. So thank you both so much for coming on and sharing with us, being vulnerable, opening up your intellection for us, our clients, everyone who has an opportunity to see or hear this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting.
Yes. So I'm gonna add my thanks to Jen's. I do want to also add a couple sort of logistic notes for those of you that are listening. If you liked this episode, we really encourage you to continue the conversation, whether you find us on our Apple podcast channel and want to leave us a review or a comment. We'd love to have your thoughts added to this conversation. We also encourage you to click subscribe, and so that you keep getting videos like this one and seeing and hearing from wonderful coaches like Henk and Marjonne. We are on Acast and YouTube. Jen and I each have our own channels on YouTube, so you can see this conversation. But we really encourage you to keep engaging with this material, because as you can tell, there's a lot of thought that they've put into what they've shared today.
Absolutely. And if there's ever a time that you want to reach out to Chad or me or Marjonne or Henk, all of our information and contact notes are in the show notes for this episode. So please reach out.
And so until next time, I'm Chad Ahern of Talent Teams Consulting, encouraging you to keep playing to your strengths.
And I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching, encouraging you to be uniquely you.